He sat at the computer and clicked the mouse. The guy opened the game and entered the necessary login details. The connection was successful, and a black-haired character surrounded by a blue glow appeared in the game world. The brunette's attention was drawn to an unexpected notification sound. The guy was surprised that he received a message immediately after entering the game. Ramentacat was exclaiming in chat that the undead was active, and the player didn't like the way they called him at all. The guy didn't respond to the message, but only asked if there was anyone else on the server. While no one responded, he thought about what he would do in the game today. The notification sound was heard again, and the user's gaze fell on the chat. There, Yellowstorm asked if he was ready to drop to second place this month. At first, the guy was somewhat taken aback by such a statement, and his gaze darkened. But then the brunette's lips stretched into a predatory smile. The guy with the nickname Boxer was a first-ranked player for 22 months in a row, and now he decided to check this month's rating. The game Legends of Heroes 2 was launched more than 10 years ago, but it was so good that it still has players. The game allowed the user to choose a suitable character, which was raised according to the player's preferences. Also, based on the achievements of users, a rating was compiled every month, which could be seen in the Hall of Fame, where Uder arrived. He walked confidently towards his goal along the corridor, passing other players. However, the character immediately stopped, hearing familiar girls calling the guy. Rank 95 player Ramentacat joked that she hopes for a disappointment from Rank 1 Boxer this month, and Yellowstorm, which had been ranked second for 21 months in a row, even declared that this time it was going to be first. Shocked by the character's cute outfits, Uder told Cordelia that her wings were falling into the texture. Before adding anything else, the guy pulled out a pair of square-framed glasses. He put them on, struck his greatest genius pose, and declared that the eternally second Yellowstorm had eyes bigger than his stomach. But the indignant Yellow did not agree and said that this time everything would be different, to which the smiling brunette replied, "Dream as much as you like." This month's results have finally surfaced, interrupting the players' conversation. From these, it turned out that Cordelia was only 800 points behind Boxer. Yellow was very angry about this, and the brunette tried so hard to hold back his laughter that he even blushed. The guy made fun of Cordelia, who didn't understand how she could have missed out on so many points and was actively cursing, while Ramentacat tried to calm her down and protect her friend from being banned from chatting. But suddenly, both Uder and Cordelia left the server. The remaining player noted the simultaneousness of their exit and was sure that a romance would develop between the two. A notification appeared that users Kang Jinho and Hong Yuhee had entered the constellations, and then, in one huge castle, a scream was suddenly heard. The brunette sat in a luxurious room in a chair and coughed. The guy was holding his throat, unable to breathe normally. Everything around him was floating, and he did not recognize the space. Sweat was running down his face. The guy was looking at his hand, wondering where it was. The brunette could not remain idle and, wanting to find out everything, made an attempt to get up, which turned out to be successful. He walked through the unfamiliar room, feeling dizzy and weak. The guy thought he had caught a cold, and at that moment he noticed a man in front of him. He was the young version of the Boxer character in Legends of Heroes 2. Although not immediately, the brunette realized that it was his reflection in the mirror. After this realization, a headache suddenly appeared. The guy staggered, clutching his head and realizing that this was accompanied by information entering his brain. The constellations were the location where the plot of Legend of Heroes 2 took place. The heroes of this game found themselves in a fantasy world where nations were at war with each other. Then angels and demons descended into this same world. And Uder entered the game as former loser Uder Bale, the second son of the family, famous for his fencing. While the boy was in a panic, someone called the young master. There was a knock on the door asking for permission to enter. While the maid stood outside the door, Uder could not recover from the shock that he was this young master. The girl took hold of the door handle, asking if Bale was there, who was not at all ready to contact anyone. The maid nevertheless entered the room, taking Uder by surprise. For a while they stood silently and looked at each other, because the embarrassed guy did not know what to say. Bale's personal maid apologized for her rudeness, and explained that she had thought the room was empty due to the lack of a response. Trying to hide his anxiety, the brunette was able to remember that the girl's name was Maya. No matter how strange what was happening seemed, the guy needed to calm down. And now, putting on a serene expression, he asked what the maid needed. Maya said that she was looking for the master, because the girl to whom he was engaged had come to him. Uder's hand trembled, and only now did he feel the ring that had been hidden on his finger all this time. In the living room of Bale's house, a girl was sitting on the sofa, and behind her stood a woman in a blue uniform with her hands folded behind her back. Because of the long wait, the bride was losing patience and wanted to leave. She asked Dahlia if it was possible to visit her fiancé another time, to which she received a negative answer. Uder followed Maya down the hallway and remembered that Uder was betrothed to Cornelia Chase, from a family known for its magic. Yellowstorm played her, but ever since Boxer's fiancé became the real Cordelia, his heart began to beat faster. However, the guy ordered himself not to pay attention to this and to meet with the characters only to clarify the situation. Finally, Cordelia's wait was interrupted by the arrival of the groom and his maid. As a sign of greeting and respect, he performed a small bow, and then Uder misspoke, introducing himself by his nickname, but quickly corrected himself, calling himself the second son of the House of Baal. And such a reservation had meaning for the girl. Having finished saying his name, he looked up at his bride. Suddenly, Uder noticed the name of the Yellowstorm player above her head. Cordelia also saw something similar above the guy and stood up abruptly in surprise. They just looked at it all, not understanding what was happening. The inscriptions disappeared, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. The guy addressed the girl informally, which alerted his maid. Alarmed, Baal asked why Cordelia had come out. This same question interested Cordelia herself, making her nervous. She stood frozen in shock, her mouth open, and Uder, glaring at her, mentally urged himself to calm down. The boy convinced himself that Cordelia Chase was there because she was engaged to Baal, but it was unclear what kind of thing he saw above the bride's head. The brunette wondered why Yellowstorm kept coming to mind, and Maya snapped him out of his thoughts. Uder asked for forgiveness and offered the girl to sit down, to which she agreed. They sat opposite each other and silence fell between them. Having come to his senses, Uder decided to test Cordelia to avoid drawing false conclusions. So he just said, "Hi, Cordelia," and that made the girl even more worried. This obvious reaction made Boxer understand that he was not mistaken. The guy wanted to ask a lot of questions, but there were strangers nearby, so it was necessary to find a more suitable place and time for conversation. Uder said it was time to initiate cooperation, and this amazed the bride. He continued, "To the left of the entrance at the 9th column at 9 o'clock. It was a kind of code that suggested a meeting at midnight in Baal's garden. The brunette was worried that the bride might not understand this. And then the girl proved that she was Cordelia, using her own jargon. Since Cordelia understood everything, and the discussion of all topics was supposed to take place at night, the girl now told Dahlia that it was time for them to go. The bride quickly walked away, and the accompanying woman, who was surprised by the rapid end of the reception, had to catch up with Cordelia. The brunette finally threw the girl, "I will look forward to our next meeting, Miss Cordelia." The maid wanted an explanation of what was happening, but Uder interrupted her question, saying that everything was fine. Now the guy relaxed and, considering himself crazy, noted that even from the manner of communication it was clear that Cordelia really was Cordelia. It was midnight, and 2 fading moons were already shining in the starry sky. Freezing in his garden from the northern climate, Baal was waiting for his bride. He was worried that Cordelia might have trouble getting to his house when he suddenly noticed a girl in a brown robe. Uder immediately hurried to meet her. The guy approached the bride from behind, stopped at the garden gate, and addressed the girl as Yellowstorm. Cordelia took off her hood, looked at Boxer, and also called him by his nickname. Baal decided to close the distance between them, and the bride waited silently for the groom to be close enough. The brunette asked if he should tell her what he was thinking about after the conversation, but Cordelia already guessed what he was thinking. Uder waved his hand, intending to carry out the gesture. He pointed his finger at the girl and said, "Hey, you too?" The bride supported this and, pointing her thumb at herself, said, "Hey, me too." They stood like that for a few more moments, and then Cordelia decided to stop fooling around and get down to business. Cordelia explained that 2 days ago, she simply opened her eyes and suddenly found herself in the constellations. The Boxer also felt as if he had been in this world for 2 days, and he attributed his uncertainty to Uder Baal's illness. 9 blocked yin paths, a disease characterized by too much yin qi, causing problems with the blood vessels and weakening the body, making it impossible to use mana. It was difficult to find a cure, and now Uder regretted that he had become Baal, even though he had good resistance to the disease. He said out loud that it would be better to become a rogue character like Leon or Maximilian, which raised questions from Cordelia. The guy said that, according to the maid, he had been unconscious for 2 days and had said strange things, and now Cordelia understood why the brunette was unsure of his memory. But Cordelia was also outraged by the secret meeting because she came to visit the guy, and besides, it was difficult for the girl to escape without her parents finding out about it. Uder explained that he wouldn't be able to jump over the fence with 9 blocked yin paths and asked since when was a second-rank player a girl. Cordelia was surprised by this question and answered, "Since I was born." Bale was shocked by this information and could not squeeze out a full word. Not believing this, the guy asked again, "Was Yellowstorm a girl?" And Cordelia asked back, "Were you a guy?" Eventually, Cordelia explained that she hadn't mentioned it because she didn't think it was important. Uder, who had previously been unable to determine the player's gender due to the specific jargon, accepted the turn of events but was still perplexed. The guy had another reason for the secret meeting, but before voicing it, he asked Cordelia not to be angry. Brunette reported that his father, Count Bale, had taken his other sons and vassals on the expedition. This meant that the mansion was virtually empty, reducing the chances of the bride and groom being caught. Uder was sure of this, since he remembered their departure, which surprised him greatly. Cordelia noticed this change in emotions, so she asked, "Are you the same?" She explained that the guy became a character in the game, which he had been playing for a long time, and admitted that at first she also thought that she was in the game. But over time, the girl began to feel that Yellowstorm was her past life. She felt no clash between her memories and Cordelia's, so calling Earl Chase her father was easy. Uder also called Count Bale his father, which was natural. After Cordelia's words, the boy began to realize that they were not just inside the game. Everything around was reality. Uder called the situation dangerous and concluded that they had no way to go back. But with this world, everything was not so simple. Constellations was supposed to destroy the great summoning ritual. Uder's attitude towards his character changed abruptly, and this infuriated Cordelia, who thought that the guy was joking in such a dire situation. Then, Bale explained that although the heroes were not the main ones, the warrior suited him perfectly, and the magician suited the girl. Cordelia smiled, understanding what was going on. They continued to think like players and considered their team to be perfect because they could share items without any problems. Uder never thought that after 5 years of playing alone he would team up with anyone. Waking up in a game was absurd. But joining a team with the eternally second girl was even stranger. He stated that they would still have to try, and each new statement made Cordelia more and more angry. But Uder tried to calm Cordelia, urging her to listen to him. If everything was real, then Bale could have been cured earlier. But to do so, he would have needed to obtain items of exceptional power. The brunette said that the girl shouldn't do everything alone, and he would help if he felt better. But Cordelia didn't care, as she thought that such things couldn't be found here. Then the guy said that there was a similar item in the Belcane Mountains. This made Cordelia pause for a moment. She thought about what Uder had said, and only one thing came to mind. Cordelia screamed, "You're talking about the solar chain," and a nervous Bale asked to be quieter because no one should notice them. Remembering that their meeting was secret, the girl covered her mouth with her hand. She called Boxer crazy because the solar chain dropped from the mid-boss Lysengang, and they were too weak for it, being level 1. Uder said he had thought about it, so he had one choice. The guy put his finger to his chin, pretending to think about something. Then Bale stunned Cordelia by asking her out on a date. Then the girl asked again what Uder had said, and he repeated again, "Let's go on a date in a carriage." One sunny day, a white carriage with a floral pattern on the door, drawn by black horses, stopped in the flower garden. A girl in a blue dress and matching shoes with yellow bows came out of it. Cordelia noted awkwardly that the weather was beautiful, to which Uder agreed. The brunette said that the beauty of the flowers was really worth getting out of the carriage. The players were watched by Maya and Dahlia, as Bale said that the flowers were not as beautiful as the girl, who in turn replied that she hated the guy and asked him not to tease him. Uder laughed at this and invited the lady to walk with him. Cordelia agreed and was already rushing away from the carriage. The girl could no longer tolerate this pretense and insulted Uder, who was indifferent to the abuse, but warned that others should not hear this. He also asked not to walk too fast, so that no one would think that this walk was a complete deception. Cordelia felt there was no time for this and demanded that they move on to discussing the plan as soon as possible. She reminded that the team was supposed to capture Lysengang and get the sun chain on the first level. This decoration was a sacred object containing the power of the devil. The item was dropped by Lysengang's Red Moon, a powerful demon sealed in the Temple of Sun Gold in the middle of the Belcane Mountains that could be defeated in the second part of the game. Bale explained that he had no intention of catching the demon, but he had a plan, so the boy asked if the lady had gotten the supplies he had asked for. The girl brought them, hiding them under her skirt, which was what Uder expected from the Storm Girl. And now he could trust Cordelia with everything else. Cordelia got angry, saying that she had never been a storm person and asked him to stop saying such nasty things. Cordelia asked what Uder was going to do, and the guy, stating that it was simple, pointed to something. Bale asked if the girl could see the cliff. He explained that on the way here he checked the area and realized that it was no different from the game location. so Cordelia could get them off the cliff using magic. But the girl said that the temple of the sun god would be delayed when they found themselves in his flower garden. Cordelia asked why they had to jump from here, and Uder asked, "Have you ever taken this path in the game?" The lady couldn't answer, and the guy explained that it was the shortest route. Cordelia blushed and said that she knew it, and that she said it just for fun, but Uder concluded that Cordelia did not know how to lie, because everything was visible on her face. They could have taken the long way, but they were in an unsuitable situation. And with Bale's method, Maya and Dahlia couldn't follow them because they didn't have magic. But the guy was worried about another detail and he wanted to play it safe. Before voicing his thought, Uder asked Cordelia to promise not to scream or hit him. The girl agreed, and then the guy whispered in her ear, "After we jump, I want to make the most of our engagement." Cordelia did not keep her promise and screamed that she did not agree to this. The attendants became wary, and Bale asked Cordelia to voice better ideas, if she had any. The girl grabbed the hat and began to pull it hard towards herself, burning with anger. Since she couldn't think of anything else, Cordelia agreed to the guy's shameful proposal. Then the brunette took the lady by the hand and shouted, "Let's run!" Maya and Dahlia became nervous and started calling for the lady and gentleman. But the couple ignored their escorts. Cordelia pushed off the ground and said, "Let's fly!" She walked down the cliff, holding Uder in her arms, and her skirt rose up, revealing her girlish legs, on which the items Bale needed were fastened with belts. Finally, Uder and Cordelia felt the ground beneath their feet, on which a magic circle was emerging from the girl's magical flight. Dahlia ran to the cliff and, warning that it was dangerous below, asked the lady to return. While Cordelia was gathering her strength, the brunette whispered to her to be faster. The girl, flushed with shame, cried out that she would like to spend time alone with Sir Uder. She had no intention of doing anything indecent because the guy was a gentleman, and the girl also said that she would be back before lunch. Dahlia didn't understand when the two had become close, but she continued to insist that the lady should not leave the escort. Then, Maya placed her hand on the woman's shoulder and assured her that the gentleman was indeed a gentleman. But Dahlia saw the problem elsewhere, and while this heated conversation was going on, the couple quickly moved away from their escorts. The ladies continued to call out to the young gentleman and lady, but the fugitives no longer responded to this. Once far enough away, Cordelia was indignant that she was the one who had to perform embarrassing actions, because she was the one holding the guy in her arms, and she was the one who had to justify herself to Maya and Dahlia. The boxer didn't like the girl's whining because he was the one who had 8 torn yin veins. Uder explained that he could not lift Cordelia with his weak arms, one of which he showed for greater persuasiveness, and Cordelia declared that she would do something terrible to him after his recovery. Bale admitted that he, too, had embarrassed himself when he wrote the letter. While the guy was doing this, Maya, who loved reading romance novels, stood behind him and advised him to start the text by calling the lady his beloved. But it was still better than what Cordelia had to endure. But no matter how angry the girl was with Boxer, it was time to go, and Uder took charge. After 10 minutes of walking, the brunette became exhausted and fell to the ground. Cordelia was unhappy with this, but still asked if the guy was okay. The 9 severed yin veins made themselves known, revealing just how weak Bale was. The brunette, with his face buried in the ground, asked his friend to carry him on her back, but Cordelia didn't hear him and asked the guy again. With his last strength, Uder repeated that the girl should carry him, since they needed to get to the temple on time. This time, Cordelia understood everything, asking the guy to remain silent, and Bale said not to say anything that foreshadowed death. Despite the brunette's weight, the girl dragged him to the cave, which looked the same as in the game. The guy did not respond to all the lady's statements about this, as if he were dead. At some point, Cordelia stopped, seeing something amazing. It was the temple of the sun god, where the Blood Moon demon Lysengang was locked up after the battle with the Solar Crusader. As Uder climbed off the lady's back, she exclaimed, "That's what it feels like." Cordelia reminded of a pop-up message when entering the temple, which stated that the character could sense divine power. In the game, it was just text, but now that it was real, Cordelia felt her heart speed up. Uder looked at the girl and suddenly noticed how his own heart rate quickened, which the guy didn't like. Cordelia noted that thanks to the divine style, there were no monsters in the temple, but she was still unsure of the safety of the team's actions. Cordelia was already walking around the building in search of Lysengang's seal, and at that moment, Uder was trying to calm his racing heart, because Cordelia's appearance was supposed to be cute, but Uder was not delighted with Yellowstorm herself. Finally, the seal was found by Cordelia, followed by Bale. Cordelia admired that this place also exactly matched the location in the game. The demon was so huge and powerful that it took an entire room to seal it away. Uder interrupted Cordelia's admiration by asking her to give him the items he had asked her to get. The girl immediately began to fulfill his request, lifting her hem. But suddenly she asked the brunette to turn away, explaining that all the things were hidden under her skirt. Cordelia also warned him that if he turned around before time, he would meet his death. The girl then freed her legs from the straps, taking out paper, a pen, a brush and bottles of red liquid. Cordelia found it difficult to hide all this, and she demanded that Uder be grateful to her. Then Uder said that it would be difficult for him to prepare a magical medicine, and he was glad that the Chase family were wizards, so the guy still said thank you. Cordelia smiled and asked to be praised more often, to which Bale said, "Yes, yes, thank you, Your Highness." Uder dipped his brush into the bottle, and the bristles immediately became soaked with the contents. Then he knelt down on one knee and said with a satisfied face, "Now show your strength." Cordelia sat on the threshold, waiting while Bale drew the magic circle. In what was written, she recognized the circle of Bellastina. He was the greatest achievement of the mage, who showed his superiority in the later parts of the Legend of Heroes. Due to the 3-minute time limit, it was also called the Instance Magic Circle. The stronger the demon, the more power the magic circle of restriction held. While Cordelia was amazed at Boxer's memory, he was already tired of drawing and was stretching his hands. Uder said it was Cordelia's turn now, and the girl became nervous. The guy didn't want to explain anything because of the fatigue that had come over him, and only asked if the girl knew what to draw. The lady assured him that she knew, and the brunette could barely contain his laughter, seeing the obvious lie. Due to his illness, Bale was unable to activate the magic circle, so it was the girl's responsibility. Cordelia, due to her first level, did not have enough mana to hold the demon for 3 minutes. However, mana from the seal of the sun god Solari could be used as power. This method was supposed to restore the sealed one's body a little, while preserving the power of the temple that bound Lysengang. 1 drop of blood was enough to activate the circle, and Uder asked the lady not to overdo it. As she prepared to cut her finger with the knife, Cordelia asked why the boy was so worried. Without waiting for an answer, the lady pierced the skin with the weapon, and several drops of blood splashed on the floor. The girl spoke the activation words, and the magic circle began to glow. At first, Bale was glad that everything was working, but then he was overcome with anxiety. Everything shook, and the boy asked if Cordelia was okay, who reported that the mana density was rapidly increasing. The girl clearly saw how Solari's seal was broken. The red flash above the magic circle faded, revealing to the team a creature with horns and cat ears. The demon was unconscious and his hands were in shackles. Another moment, and this huge, bony creature with wings in all its glory hung over the characters. Bellastina's magic circle has been activated correctly. The demon was bound in iron chains, but now Uder doubted himself. He felt like he would break under the stress, which was natural for a meeting with a mid-level boss. Distracted from his fear, Uder turned his gaze to Cordelia to make sure she was okay, and he was surprised to see the delight on Cordelia's face. The girl squealed with joy, pointing to the creature's waist. There, hanging from the demon's bones, was a sun medallion. Bale was shocked that Cordelia was only interested in the spoils, and the lady did not even flinch from the power of Lysengang. The still happy girl even offered her staff to get the chain with the medallion. Cordelia urged the boy to hurry before the demon woke up, and Uder still decided that using a stick would be better than touching the creature directly. The boy took the magic staff and extended it towards Lysengang with a trembling hand. Getting as close as possible, Uder tried to grab the medallion. Wanting to get the loot as quickly as possible, the girl actively supported Bale. The guy was sure that he would get the chain any minute, but something irreparable happened. The demon awoke from his sleep, casting his fiery gaze upon the people. The giant stared at them, trying to comprehend what was happening. Cordelia and Uder stood like statues until the boy suddenly pulled the staff towards himself. The prey was now in the brunette's hands, and the team prepared to flee, which angered Lysengang. Because of his raging hatred for humans, the demon called them insects. To stop the fugitives, he created a strong stream of air. Such a powerful wave was able to knock down the weak Uder. Uder was amazed that despite the fact that the creature was sealed, it was quite strong. The situation was not the best, as the brunette's legs gave out and he could not get up. Then Cordelia took the initiative, threatening the demon. She told him not to mess with her, because Lysengang couldn't even move because of the chains, and a blue magic circle was looming under Cordelia's feet. The next moment, she used her weak attack, Magic Missile, against the boss. The girl's madness shocked Boxer. He called the lady crazy and did not understand why Cordelia stayed with him. But the lady ignored his question, and a blue glow began to appear around her. It puzzled the already shocked guy. The brunette couldn't believe that Cordelia's level had just increased. Lysengang was a powerful mid-to-late game boss who took the life of the paladin Garius in the final battle and was sealed in a temple built in the northern part of the Sail Kingdom. Under normal circumstances, the team would not have been able to damage the demon, but now there was an opportunity to attack him with Belestina's magic circle. Thanks to this, Cordelia was able to gain enough combat experience to increase her experience by dealing only 1 point of damage, and this prank gave Boxer special pleasure. Lysengang was indignant that some weaklings had come out against him, when suddenly a blow flew into his face. With a crazy smile on her face, the girl used the magic missile. She continued to use the same spell, glad that she had leveled up instead of running away, and Bale was amazed at her accuracy. The indignant demon said, "You worthless ones, how dare you use such a thing against me?" But no one cared about the creature's statements, and now Uder also wanted to raise his level. This was all that Uder always thought about when he appeared before Lysengang. Holding the solar medallion in his hands, the boy began to read a prayer. "I am the only one blessed by the great sun god Solari. Venerable is he who shines in the morning that brightens the darkness. Wake up and burn at my fingertips." Due to his illness, Uder was unable to use magic or martial arts. The boy decided to fight while overloaded and attacked the demon with the medallion, dealing 1 point of damage. The level increased and the teammates continued to bully the disgruntled demon. Belestina's circle could only be used once, and that was the only chance to beat Lysengang, which was only 1 minute away. Therefore, the players did not waste time and continued to actively attack the enemy. When it was time to return, the demon shouted that he had memorized the characters' faces and imprinted their souls. The monster claimed to make Bale and Cordelia suffer, but they only struck again. The creature urged them to listen to him and said that they would definitely meet again. Then the players said that it would actually happen at level 7 and noted that they had fun. Lysengang disappeared, and the bride and groom were left alone in complete silence. Cordelia exhaled, deciding to break their silence. The girl said that she was sure that Boxer was crazy and that he thought the same thing about her. The lady asked if Uder was getting better, and the boy explained that it would take time to melt the blocked energy. Since the level was increased and the item was received, Cordelia suggested returning, to which Bale agreed, hugging the lady around the neck. Cordelia was unhappy with this gesture, and Uder asked her to simply support him a little. The brunette's legs were shaking, and he explained that he had completely lost his strength. Since it was hard for Uder to walk on his own, Cordelia still decided to help him. Besides, it would be better than carrying the guy on her back. Upon returning home, Bale and Cordelia were punished with 10 days of house arrest. However, their foray allowed them to obtain a relic that once belonged to a paladin, and a handmade wand of a novice wizard, ordered by Count Chase for his daughter. The new day in the fantasy world was sunny and seemed to bode well. The young gentleman lay on his bed, suffering from pain all over his body. He had no idea that 10 laps of the training field would tire Bale so much, not having the strength to get up. The guy glanced at the table where the obtained relic lay. The brunette already felt an improvement in his condition thanks to the sun medallion. The world of Legend of Heroes 2 became the new reality for Boxer and Cordelia, so their main goal was now survival. The constellations were destined to be destroyed by the great ritual of summoning. Angels and demons were about to descend into the world, which would lead to Armageddon, which meant that the ritual had to be stopped. However, 2 weak characters were not enough to achieve this goal. No matter how much he was in a hurry, it was high time to polish the basics. But in this matter, he was not alone. Everything could be overcome together with Cordelia. A week had passed since the removal of the sun medallion, and there were still 3 days of punishment left. It was time to prepare for what was to come, which would have made Maya happy. Cordelia was spending her time quietly in bed, reading a book when suddenly a shudder ran through her body. She didn't like the ominous premonition that had come over her, because the first major event in the form of a social gathering was still a long way off, and Uder had already planned something. The girl's mind played with an imagination where Bale made fun of her second rank and her inability to remember the magic circle. Cordelia's fantasy was interrupted by a knock on the door. The lady allowed the guest to enter but did not get up. The door opened and a smiling Dahlia entered the room. She reported that a love letter had arrived from young Mr. Uder. Cordelia did not consider Boxer a gentleman, because in her opinion, he always made fun of the girl. Although this irritated Cordelia, she was already ready to accept the letter. Noticing the knight Dahlia's emotions, Cordelia asked why she was so delighted, and the knight replied that it was wonderful news. Dahlia noticed that the lady had not eaten for several days, worrying about Uder, so the letter should have eased her worries. But Cordelia herself did not notice that she had ever been hungry. The knight asked Cordelia for forgiveness for getting angry at the lady when she saw her and the master jumping from the Belcane Mountains. Then Dahlia became very afraid for her mistress. After all, the knight had to protect Cordelia, so she couldn't react any other way. However, later Dahlia realized that the girl had found someone she could be with. The woman admitted that Maya taught her something more by showing her a book where there was exactly the same situation. And such words only outraged Cordelia more. The knight asked to read the letter quickly because, most likely, it contained quite a lot of beautiful words. The lady actually decided to study the letter right away, but only in order to get rid of it faster. Cordelia was infuriated by the very beginning, where Bale wrote, "To the most beautiful Miss Cordelia," and Mrs. Dahlia, who was watching, smiled, thinking that the girl liked what was written. But the lady herself was sure that the entire paper was saturated with sarcasm and contained a coded joke. She continued to read the text carefully and discovered something important. At the very bottom, there was a note in Korean. In 2 days in the confessional of the Varuna temple at 2 o'clock. Goddess Varuna was the guardian and keeper of secrets. Her temples, built all over the continent, had beautiful confessionals where people could speak of their secrets of any size. Cordelia wondered what Uder wanted to tell her, because in the temple he certainly wasn't going to ask for forgiveness from the girl he had been teasing all the time. Cordelia noted that the guy by nature would never ask for a meeting without a reason, and told Dahlia that she had to go to a meeting in 2 days, but stopped short. And then she corrected herself, explaining that she would go on a date with the young master at the temple of Varuna, which touched the knight. Dahlia exclaimed, "He's asking you out on a date right on the day your sentence ends." It seemed that young Master Uder was very eager to see the young lady, and these words angered Cordelia, who knew that Boxer was only interested in leveling up. But in any case, Cordelia needed to go to the temple, which the knight considered specific and suitable for secret meetings. Dahlia clenched her hand into a fist and asked the lady not to worry. This time, the inspired defender was going to make sure that no one dared to interfere with the couple. Cordelia found it difficult to react to such statements, but she still managed to squeeze out gratitude. After 2 fateful days, the house arrest sentence finally ended. The carriage, decorated with red cloth, moved through the city, heading towards the Varuna temple. Her goal had been achieved, and now Dahlia was standing outside the building, telling Cordelia that she would be nearby so as not to disturb the couple whispering to each other. The knight said that she would return in half an hour and wished them a pleasant time on their date. And Cordelia, who had entered the temple, stubbornly repeated in her mind that this meeting was only the second part of the quest. The golden heels of black shoes clicked on the wooden steps, lifting their owner higher and higher. Once on the second floor, Cordelia began to look around, trying to figure out where she needed to go next. Having found the necessary door, she knocked, and a voice called her to enter. There was a wall in the room equipped for confession, and behind it, on a chair, sat Uder, greeting Yahello, who had arrived on time. Cordelia also greeted the guy and asked how you rented the confessional. Did you become a priest or something? Uder asked what the girl meant and noted that someone might misunderstand her words. Then Bale explained that he was the son of a count, and money decided everything, and the girl replied that if anyone in your family heard a 17-year-old boy say something like that, they would be shocked. Uder said there was nothing to worry about since his family was still away. The lady decided to get down to business and asked why the guy had invited her here. Uder explained that there was a hidden dungeon here, which surprised Cordelia. There was not a single thread on the game's discussion site related to the Varuna temple. Only Uder knew about this feature, and he did not want to tell others about the quests he had found. The girl slapped the book with her palm, asking if the guy had ever written a quest guide on the forum. He asked not to point fingers at him, and replied that he only wrote those guides that were already known to everyone. Uder asked if Cordelia had been downloading everything, but the lady did not answer, falling into a stupor. Upon realizing, Cordelia bared her teeth and grabbed her head, claiming that she sensed a trick. The girl tore her hair out, realizing that it was not for nothing that she could not catch up with Boxer on points, who mentally noted how naive the lady was. An indignant Cordelia returned to the topic of the dungeon, hoping that this time the items obtained through joint efforts would not only go to Uder. The guy remembered that during the leveling on Lysengang, Cordelia did not look deprived, and said that this time everything would be fair. Hidden deep within the temple's library was the Book of Dungeons. Those who opened this item were transported to the dungeon, and it could be either a hoax or real. After completing the dungeon, the team had to obtain 1 book each, allowing them to learn martial arts or magical skills. Uder had only passed it as a warrior, so he didn't know exactly what Cordelia might receive. The girl was supposed to be the first magician to pass through this dungeon. At first, this news made Cordelia think, and then the lady was filled with genuine joy. With great enthusiasm, Cordelia asked where to look for the Book of Dungeons. However, Uder had already found it while he was waiting for the girl, and now the book lay in front of him on the table. The girl noted that it was immediately clear who the first-rank player was here, and she strove to go on a raid as soon as possible. At this time, Dahlia was waiting for the lady near the entrance to the confessional. In the empty room, there remained an open book, from which magical lines ran. The dark dungeon with wooden doors and stone columns was lit by torches with green flames. After moving to this place, Cordelia suddenly became ill. She felt sick during the teleportation, the girl's head was splitting with pain, and Uder even began to worry about the lady. Cordelia was disappointed that she was the one who got seasick, and the guy told her to take it slow since he was nearby. Cordelia leaned against the column, sure she was going to be sick. Finally, the lady felt better and began to look around the space, which, according to Bale, was exactly like in the game. Uder explained that it was a virtual dungeon that would immediately teleport the deceased back. But Cordelia wasn't interested, as she was planning to clear the area on the first try. A nervous Cordelia moved closer to Bale and pinched his shoulder. So she decided to check that it would still hurt. Uder then explained that it was in any case a great way to train without risking your life. The girl asked if the labyrinth was better in real battles and received a positive answer. Besides, Uder had Cordelia, which puzzled her. Instead of hunting, the brunette preferred to meet people, obtain items, participate in events, without focusing on just one element of the game. Cordelia, on the other hand, spent most of her time hunting, which was confirmed even by the player's characteristics. Given that the characters were in a dungeon, Cordelia's skills were needed, and the girl concluded that the guy wanted her to do all the work for both of them. Since things turned out this way, the lady said that she took something with her. Taking out the items she had grabbed, the girl asked Uder to turn towards her. Cordelia showed the magic stones, saying that before she could only use magic projectiles, but now everything will be different. The girl turned out to be thoughtful and stocked up on jewelry in advance. These stones were made by Cordelia's father, who was known for his magical abilities and was one of the 4 most powerful people in the north. The guy called the items cool, deciding that this was Cordelia's trump card. The lady was content with the admiration of the boy, who guessed that Cordelia did not have many game things left. Uder once again spoke words of praise, trying to find something in his briefcase. Bale pulled out a stack of papers intended for the girl. These were basic magic scrolls that allowed one to instantly cast spells without having to cast them. Uder explained that he couldn't stay on the sidelines, hiding behind Cordelia's back, so he made scrolls that were appropriate for the team's level. The girl was amazed by the fact that Uder remembered so much. The guy asked if Cordelia could draw such circles, since she had the 2nd rank and came from a family with magical abilities. The brunette had fun teasing the lady, watching her get nervous, and, barely holding back his laughter, asked her to share her mana. Cordelia thought about the situation and suddenly remembered Uder's recent words about hiding behind her back. And then she realized that Bale wanted to send her to the Vanguard, which the guy explained by his inability to use mana due to blocked veins. It turned out that the guy had lost the Sun Medallion, and now he asked Cordelia not to be angry, because he warned that his illness could not be cured so easily. The brunette also said that he had saved several potions and armor for the girl, but this still did not change her attitude towards the situation, because she understood that all this was originally Uder's plan. After drinking the potions, Cordelia was indignant, because in the game she could drink them by the bucketful, but now she felt like she could explode. The brunette asked if the lady really didn't want to wear armor, and the girl explained that it would be too hard for her to fight if she did. The guy understood everything and didn't insist anymore. Bale noticed how nervous Cordelia was as she tried to get herself ready for battle. This time, things were going to be much more complicated than with Lysengang, and Uder wanted to make some kind of joke to lighten the mood. But he didn't have time to do anything because of the voices reaching them. The team was lurking around the corner, and Uder warned us to be ready as soon as we turned left. The girl concluded out loud that we must be careful. This made the brunette even more convinced that Cordelia was very worried. Uder was also nervous, but only a little. He was sure that the attribute of the goblins prowling the dungeon was darkness. So the best solution was to use the scroll of light by tearing the paper. A magic circle began to glow under the monster's feet, and they began to shout. Uder sent Cordelia into battle like a Pokemon, and the girl continued the joke by rushing forward. Cordelia waved her flower staff, casting a spell. The lady fired 5 precise shots of magic missiles at the goblins. The guy reported that the team had been spotted, and now the goblins from the neighboring block with the Earth attribute were supposed to arrive. Cordelia understood everything and was ready to strike again. But Uder asked to wait until the monsters got close enough. The best time to attack was when the goblins were in sight. The creatures hurried to their fellows and quickly showed themselves to the enemies. after which Uder gave the girl a command. Cordelia cast a spell and the floor immediately became slippery for the goblins, causing them to fall. The lady then used the scroll of binding against them. Magic chains surrounded the monsters lying on the ground, who could not understand what was happening. Bale handed Cordelia the potion, calling its immobilization combination the best of all. A dissatisfied Cordelia, her belly full, took another sip of liquid. Uder was going to move on to the next stage of the cleansing after the girl had restored her magic, and noted that it was much easier with Lysengang. These monsters were low level, so the team had no time to rest, and the lady wished she had a double experience potion in such a situation. They desperately leveled up for 5 hours. Cordelia was annoyed that in the game she could only click the mouse, and now, as she gained experience, her whole body was getting pretty tired. Bale thought he had heard something similar recently, but he didn't dwell on the déjà vu and asked if the girl's legs hurt a lot. The lady asked again, and Uder repeated, explaining that although they had stopped to rest, quite a lot had passed and for the first time it might be too much. Cordelia stared at the brunette, twirling her hair around her finger. Such obvious thoughts of Uder irritated the girl, and she did not understand why this was said at all. The monsters here had different attributes, so it was safe to say that the difficulty of the dungeon was incredibly high, but the hunting was relatively easy. Uder was able to beautifully depict the map of the area and the monster guide. He was good not only in attack, but also in support. Therefore, I prepared all the necessary things for Cordelia in advance. The guy was good at playing supporting characters, and Cordelia wondered if she would have to learn all that to become the first. The lady looked like she had a lot of grievances, and Bale found it amusing to see her holding back so that Uder wouldn't start teasing her. He asked Cordelia if they should rest before moving on. The girl said that everything was fine, although her legs hurt and her stomach was not happy with the large amount of mana potions. And she was also annoyed that the brunette was making fun of her just because he was one level higher than Cordelia. But despite this, everything was fine. Then Uder began to irritate the girl even more by feigning regret, because it was terrible to always remain in second place. But Cordelia was fine anyway, so the laughing guy said that we need to go further, and soon there will be a room with the boss. An irritated Cordelia demanded that Uder stop laughing, so he changed the subject, saying that he was not yet a mage, so he did not know what abilities the girl might have. The guy's skills were blocked, but Cordelia could already use Magic Sense, Magic Missile, Slippery Floor, and Pit. The lady wanted to know how much. They were already in the dungeon, but she was not ready to hear a number greater than 5. Since the place was fictitious and did not exist in reality, 20 minutes here was equal to 1 minute outside. It felt like more than 20 minutes had passed to Uder, and Cordelia admitted that Dahlia was supposed to pick her up in half an hour. Something in the dungeon corridor caught the warrior's attention. He told Cordelia that there was nothing to worry about. In front of the team was a tall arched door, above which were windows with various patterns that let in red light. This astonished the lady and immediately made it clear that they would meet the boss next. The girl asked what kind of monster awaited them now, and Bale replied that it would be an enraged wolf. The fact was not pleasant, and Cordelia assumed that the new creature would be of the electric type. Uder praised the magician's intelligence and warned that the monster ran fast, so he would have to constantly move. Before entering the boss's office, Uder began rummaging through his briefcase again. Cordelia stood nearby, discontentedly expecting the guy to get it this time. The brunette asked the lady not to attack the wolf until he sold the signal. The girl was indignant, thinking that Uder wanted to finish off the boss himself, just as he did with the goblins that she kept tied up. Then Bale said that he couldn't do something like that because the wolf was too strong, even if they teamed up, and Cordelia continued to be angry because the guy was deliberately finishing off her goblins. She forced herself to calm down and asked what kind of person this boss was. Cordelia wanted to know if he was any different from the usual angry wolf because, most likely, it was not for nothing that she had to wait for a warrior now. Finally, Uder took the scrolls he needed out of his briefcase. In addition to the paper, Uder took with him a small bag and said that he simply needed to prepare. They pushed the heavy door and entered the room. There, an enraged wolf was already waiting for the magician and the warrior. A level 17 creature stood before them, drooling from its mouth. The death of the heroes was already reflected in his shining yellow eyes. Smiling, Cordelia noted that the monster was looking specifically at Bale. The brunette concluded that the enraged wolf wanted to attack him first. With its powerful paws, the monster took one step, then another, and continued to move faster and faster. Cordelia felt nervous as she watched the boss approach them quickly. But Uder was calm and was going to stick to the plan, which he did not voice to the magician. The wolf was already nearby and was preparing to strike in a jump. The guy gave the command to dodge, The magician and the warrior jumped in different directions, and the blow hit the wall. Uder shouted out the player's name, urging her to the next action. Cordelia took out the scroll she needed, knowing that the wolves would only attack directly. She tore 2 sheets of paper at once, creating a double bind. Magic chains began to wrap around the monster, causing it to fall, and for the best effect, Cordelia made the surface under his paws slippery. With no chance to remain upright, the boss fell to the floor. The wolf's biggest problem was its speed, but its weakness was the simplicity of its attacks. Cordelia only needed to tie up the boss's legs so that he would not be able to resist, but due to the large difference in levels, she could not hold back this giant for long. To avoid finding themselves in a difficult situation, the team could not drag it out, so the lady advised the guy to hurry up with his preparations, and he obeyed. He took out the scrolls and began the planned action. Lightning was used against the wolf several times in a row. Cordelia was outraged that Bale asked not to attack the wolf, but ended up damaging it himself. The girl then focused on the fact that the brunette was using lightning, and at some point the magic chain could not withstand the power of the boss and broke. Uder shouted the lady's name, bringing her out of her thoughts. The wolf approached the magician, wanting to destroy her. But Cordelia managed to react in time and dodge the attack. Instead of reaching its target, the creature once again flew into the wall. Cordelia was unharmed, and Bale was able to breathe a sigh of relief. The girl found it strange that the wolf was still continuing to attack. The boss didn't take any damage, and the lady couldn't understand why they hadn't noticed it before. The warrior said that this was not enough and turned to Cordelia. He asked Cordelia to cast a water spell, and she quickly did so. For such an action, the girl needed a blue magic stone. The lady summoned a waterfall that complemented the boy's lightning. Uder was glad that the combined attacks worked, and he only had to try, and the lady, being too far away, was outraged that he was having fun on his own. The team continued to attack the enraged wolf, but the girl found it difficult to concentrate because Ixagene Deexagon's music suddenly started playing in her head. She didn't understand what it was connected with and why she heard the song Thunder. Suddenly, it flashed through her mind that she had guessed about the electric type of wolf. Then the guy praised her, confirming that this was exactly the attribute the boss possessed. Finally, Cordelia was able to understand what their mistake was that allowed the monster to remain unharmed. And yet she couldn't believe that Uder used a lightning spell against an electric wolf. Cordelia urged the warrior to stop, wanting to talk things over. But then a wolf's roar was heard, alarming the lady. The clouds of dust cleared, revealing a boss that looked even stronger to the characters. Its appearance has changed, causing a horn to appear on the creature's head. Using lightning against the wolf was the same as giving the monster a recharge. Bale was glad that the girl had finally come to her senses. Cordelia began to get angry, realizing that by preparations the guy meant increasing the boss's strength. Uder explained that there was no other choice and defeating the wolf was mandatory to obtain the skill book, and Cordelia explained that she should have been told about this earlier. But Uder thought that it wouldn't be so fun then, and the girl was amazed at how honest the brunette was. The guy gave the lady a few more scrolls and said, "Let's hurry up and get a B-rank book," but he didn't have time to finish. Cordelia snatched the sheets of paper from his hands and tore one, surprising Boxer. Somewhere behind the magician, an enraged wolf was engulfed in flames, after which the lady looked at the brunette and said with complete seriousness, "I will kill you." While the grinning wolf was choosing who to attack this time, Uder promised that from now on, he would warn Cordelia, who was shouting that she hated Bale, about everything. Be that as it may, the monster was now approaching again, and there was no time for talking. But Uder would definitely have listened to all of Cordelia's curses later, after the battle. The enraged wolves had traits similar to other races of wolf monsters. They had strong legs that allowed them to move quickly across the terrain. The attacks were straightforward, as the players had already seen for themselves. Since the trajectory of the blows was simple, it was possible to easily dodge, and at a high level of players, these wolves would no longer be any different from other monsters. Suddenly, powerful paws pushed off, directing the boss straight at the girl. The warrior warned Cordelia of the danger, and she barely managed to dodge. The lady was amazed at how the monster changed its direction. His rank increased and his attack technique became more difficult because of Uder. The change in direction and recharging increased the wolf's series of strikes, which Cordelia could easily follow with her eyes. However, she wasn't sure if she could fend off the boss's attack next time. While Cordelia was focused on the wolf, the boy backed away. Uder did not look at his feet, which felt the unevenness of the surface. The magician was thinking about how she could deal with the monster now, when she heard a crash. Turning towards Uder, the girl saw that he had fallen and lost his scrolls. The lady became nervous, not understanding how something like this could happen. She noticed a stone under the warrior's foot, which was the cause of his fall. While Bale was still sitting on the floor, the enraged wolf was about to attack. He took a running start and began pushing off from the columns so as to get around Cordelia and reach the guy. The magician was outraged that this was happening right now, and she needed to save her comrade. In an attempt to stop the monster, Cordelia fired magic missiles at it. At that moment, electricity began to play around the wolf's horn. Then a shield formed, preventing the girl's attacks from passing through. She became worried, realizing that the boss was canceling the magic. The enraged wolf found himself too close to his victim and intended to destroy his enemy. Seeing this, Cordelia understood that she would not have time to do anything. All the moments spent with Boxer in this world began to flash before her eyes. Filled with regret, the girl screamed out the guy's name, not knowing what to do next. But suddenly something strange happened that puzzled Cordelia. The monster was lying on the floor and rolling from side to side, clutching its muzzle. The girl didn't understand what had happened and asked where the terrible smell was coming from, and Bale just giggled, holding his wounded leg. He explained that angry wolves have an incredibly sensitive sense of smell, and the bag he took with him was a special stink bomb made of various objects. It didn't matter how much experience was gained from killing goblins, because the boss couldn't be defeated in the same way. The fantasy world was now reality, not a game. That's why Uder took this thing with him to neutralize the wolf. Uder said that the secret weapon had to be used effectively, which an angry Cordelia couldn't help but agree with. Bale was also injured, and his pitiful appearance calmed the magician's anger. So now she asked if the guy was okay. But the warrior, obsessed with the result rather than the process, declared that even such an attack was still an attack. In Cordelia's opinion, the guy's actions were very careless. The boy, who had never been defeated, remarked on how disgusting the bomb smelled. And Cordelia, who also valued results more, agreed. But it was time to stop discussing and finish with the dungeon. The boss, immobilized by the stench, continued to lie on the ground. And Cordelia concluded that it was time to put the disobedient wolf in a cage. To do this, the girl used a spell, Digging, which transformed the area. A blue glow surrounded the shocked wolf, creating a hole beneath the monster. For more depth, the mage continued to chant the same spell words, causing Bale to anger her by comparing her to the Pokemon Dugtrio. She finished the spell, after which the warrior tore up another scroll. The boy threw scraps of paper into the hole with the monster, saying that it was time for them to part ways. The wolf, sitting at the bottom, looked at the smiling people with despair in his eyes. It was destroyed, and Uder said that they would meet again sometime, after which Cordelia remembered that it was a virtual dungeon. Now she felt ashamed that she had worried about Bale, who would not have died anyway. A blue glow around the characters let them know they had done everything right. By defeating the boss up to level 10, the heroes received the title. Cordelia was surprised that titles were awarded here, just like in the game. A notification sounded in their heads that all stats would be permanently increased by 1, which surprised Cordelia. She was glad that she had been given a title too, and the boy hoped that it would help her forget about how he had awakened the wolf without warning the girl about it. The warrior asked why they didn't go now to get their reward. And then the magician made him fall with a slippery floor spell. The lady, insulting the guy, made Uder promise that from now on he would notify her in advance that he was going to wake up the boss. Bale apologized, thinking that he couldn't tell her how he had fallen on purpose to attract the attention of the monster that had originally been aiming at the girl. But everything was already over and the worries had disappeared. And from somewhere above, a reward slowly descended to them. These were the very same promised books that would allow one to learn a skill by reading. They turned out to be low enough that the characters were able to get the long-awaited items. Cordelia was happy and admitted that she loved getting new items because of the intrigue, because you never know what you'll get. The guy was given a technique called 36 Heavenly Steps. This technique specialized in evasion, and as it leveled up, it became an advanced martial art. Cordelia noted that the technique was similar to the 12 Steps of Divine Lightning that the warrior often used in the game. Uder thought the lady was very smart because the Divine Lightning was an improved version of the Heavenly Steps. After the 36 Heavenly Steps came the 24 Storm Steps, then the 12 Lightning Steps, and after that one could obtain the high unearthly technique 9 Heavenly Steps of Concealment. According to rumors, the highest level of the technique, which Uder was never able to obtain, allowed one to hide even from the heavens in just 9 steps. It was Cordelia's turn to see what she had received, and she hoped it would be a rare book that Bale didn't know about yet. The guy smiled, seeing how intrigued the lady was. She opened the book, revealing text and various images to Cordelia. This allowed the girl to master a magic rocket with a fire attribute. Cordelia was quite pleased with the skill she had acquired, which Uder found pleasant to watch. Since the team had received their rewards, the brunette suggested that they rest a little before returning. The warrior sat down on the threshold from a surge of fatigue, and Cordelia fell onto the stone floor. The girl noted that the sun medallion really worked. After all, a few days ago, Uder would have simply collapsed from exhaustion. Uder agreed with the lady's observations, since he was still on his feet. Bale said that he was only able to obtain the item thanks to the mage, causing Cordelia to call the guy a flatterer. The brunette's illness was gradually being cured, and the characters were level 10. And now, the girl wanted to move on to the next stage. The warrior asked, "By the next stage you mean this, right?" And they simultaneously said, "The event of the invasion, Demon Hand." Uder said that, as expected, the second one always knew the answer in advance, and the girl said that it was her line. The characters in Legend of Heroes 2 had their own main plot. No matter who you played for, Armageddon was still waiting for you in the end. But the main plot of Cordelia Chase showed how rotten the developers' morals were. Her story began with her going on a journey to attend the friendly social meeting of the 12 children of the Northern clans. For your information, Uder's plot in the main story began 6 months after the girl's death. The free tutorial took place in Earl Chase's palace-like mansion. Then, there were additional events that constantly occurred after leaving the mansion. Then you could enjoy the hidden events discovered by users. However, on the day of the mass event that was the public reception, something terrible was to happen. At the hands of the devil's followers, called the Demonic Hand, a peaceful social gathering turned into chaos. Because of this, most of the children from the 12 clans that participated in the festival suffered terribly. They were either killed or kidnapped and brainwashed. However, Cordelia managed to escape from this mess to freedom. In this incident, the girl lost all her guards, who were like family to her, and friends with whom she managed to reunite after a long time. This scene was impossible to avoid, and the game for the lady began precisely after the escape and the loss of all loved ones. On the forum, players sympathized with the character and compared his fate to Lucas's storyline. However, Cordelia's scenario was still too cruel and caused a lot of indignation among users who encountered difficulties already at the beginning of the game. There was only half a month left before the Demon's Hand attacked the secular gathering. Uder stated that there was no need to follow the doomed scenario, which Cordelia completely agreed with. She was sure that continuing the game would bring nothing but the end of the world. Uder wanted to create a happy ending, but first he had to stop the Demon Hand. The lady also wished for this, because it was a shame to lose such a powerful ally as the 12 northern clans. Besides this, Cordelia wanted to protect Dahlia. The girl did not want the knight to die as a sacrificial character protecting Cordelia. Just because the players retained memories from the past reality didn't mean that the memories of life in the constellations would disappear. Uder felt sorry for the lady, knowing that her memory also contained the events of Cordelia's growing up. For Cordelia, who was treated like a sister by her knight, regaining her memories of the video game was like learning her terrible future. He understood the girl's feelings, and although for him she was a player, inside her there was the real Cordelia Chase. The magician noted that in the game, Uder Bale was unable to attend the event due to his illness. However, now everything was different, and the guy's body functioned much better. The boy confirmed that he felt better since dear Miss Cordelia helped him get the sun medallion. The girl was angry and Uder asked what he had said wrong. Cordelia decided to change the subject, awkwardly trying to ask a question. She startled the brunette by asking if he could go to the event with her. The guy thought for a moment before answering. There was never a scenario in the game for Uder to attend a social event. It was for this change in history that Bale was in a hurry to cure his illness, so the mage didn't have to worry about it. Uder infuriated the lady by saying, "Of course, if my dear Cordelia wants it, how can I refuse?" On the training field, under a clear sky, Uder went for a run. The guy's entire shirt was soaked in sweat, and his breathing became heavy. One last step and Uder was forced to stop. He had managed to run 9 laps that morning and was now trying to catch his breath. Uder's efforts were noticed by a retired knight who had served the Bale estate for many years and began to praise the boy. Victor Cromwell saw the improvements in the boy's physical fitness and was confident that at this rate the boy would be able to study the martial arts of the Bale family as soon as the Earl returned. Uder laughed, saying he was looking forward to the moment. The knight admired the strength of spirit of the brunette, who at that moment was surprised that he was drying himself with a towel made of the same material as on the ground. From the outside, it looked as if the warrior had forgotten the pain he was experiencing because of his desire to learn martial arts. Victor tried to support the guy, saying that he shouldn't be upset and disappointed in himself because of the later start of training. With his talent, the brunette could quickly make up for lost time. Uder understood this and thanked the man. Cromwell felt that the chronically ill Uder would only grow with each passing day, reaching a higher level. Therefore, the knight wished that the count would return home soon and see the valiant appearance of his son, who was a genius in martial arts. The maid ran as fast as she could to tell the news as quickly as possible. The young gentleman she had been desperately calling for finally appeared in her field of vision. Maya stopped, unable to continue running due to lack of air. The guy asked why the girl was so surprised, but Maya didn't yet have the strength to explain everything. The maid caught her breath, straightened up, adjusted her clothes, and was ready to speak. She reported that mail had arrived from Chase County. Victor asked if this was a letter to the young gentleman from Miss Cordelia, and this assumption alarmed Uder. However, the maid immediately refuted this guess. This correspondence was from the girl's father, Arthur Chase. Bale was stunned by this news, trying to process the information. The brunette began to panic, and not believing his ears, he asked again what Maya had said. The Chase family mansion was, as expected, huge and beautiful. However, Bale couldn't admire him. Instead, the guy was so nervous that he didn't even remember how he got here. The letter from the Count only said that Arthur had invited Uder to his place to discuss everything that had happened with his daughter and boyfriend recently. It was also unexpected that Uder was losing his mind, but he had to remember what kind of person Earl Chase was. In Cordelia's story, this man seemed like a fool to the brunette. The guy assumed that Arthur wanted to hear an explanation of why Bale had taken his daughter and run with her through the flower fields, or how they were caught at a secret meeting immediately after house arrest was lifted. There were too many reasons swarming through Uder's head to meet Cordelia's father in person. The warrior was so lost in his thoughts that Maya had to bring him out of this state. The maid asked the young master not to be nervous because the couple was engaged, officially sanctioned by both families. The maid's voice trembled, so a slight deviation from the norm shouldn't be a problem. The Count was supposed to become Uder's father-in-law, so Maya was sure that the man would understand everything. The brunette decided that he really should calm down, and Arthur Chase just wanted to meet his future son-in-law. But the guy became even more nervous, realizing that he was walking around the house of his future in-laws. Bale screamed in his mind, not knowing how to proceed or what to say. Suddenly, a female voice called out, "Young Master Uder." The brunette raised his head and greeted Madame Dahlia. She said that she would take the guy to the living room. Following the night, Bale inquired about Miss Cordelia, and the woman said that the lady did not yet know about the groom's arrival. The brunette concluded that he didn't have time to develop a plan before he entered the boss's room. The knight knocked on the door and informed the Count that Mr. Bale had arrived. Uder stood nervously behind, waiting for the beginning of the end. Dahlia turned around and said that they could enter. The Count was waiting. Somewhere in the spruce forest, the expedition set up camp. The man wondered if it was because it was getting colder or if monsters were appearing more often. Still, he hoped that the city would not be damaged. Uder's father, Alex Bale, responded that the number of monsters was indeed increasing, so as many as possible needed to be killed before returning home. The boy agreed with this and then asked what his father had read. The man replied that he had just received information from Victor. Alex reported that Uder was not only getting healthier, but would soon be able to move on to studying martial arts. He never fully recovered, but thanks to the sun medallion found with Miss Cordelia, the blockage in his veins gradually receded. The son was surprised and called the meeting with Lady Chase the happiest event that had ever happened to his brother. The man believed that such news should have pleased Earl Chase.